Hey everybody, welcome back to the V-Cypher channel. It's me, Ben, the Skullcap Savant, once again, to make an attempt at removing the V that's got a hold of your noose. It's an auspicious day. It's the vernal equinox, March 21st. This is actually an important day in our lore, because it's V-Stag. A lot of people call this the spring equinox. We know better. It's actually the V-Stag cast on this day that has the whole world thinking that we're going into the age of Aquarius instead of the actual age we're going into, it would seem, the age of Leo. That's to say if the V-Stag is correct at pointing us to the fact that the new year in the astrological Yuga calendar starts on September 21st, the autumnal equinox, not March 21st. This is something that is an aside. We don't need to get deeply into the weeds on that today. But it is one of those key astrological things that we actually have a correct framing of because of the V-Stag and because of what we've been able to use the V-Cypher for to decode in the false nature of history, the false nature of the medical system, the false nature of math, science, you name it. All of these domains that are crunching numbers and perception, the sensory application of things. We've come to understand, obviously, through the V-Stag over the years, that its presence, the glyph of the V, the spell casting it's being implemented by way of it, is keeping a veil over us, a veil of lack of truth, a veil of lies. It's keeping us from seeing the truth, and maybe even doing more than that. I mean, how deeply the mind control goes, we haven't really even scratched the surface of yet, I don't think. But it's written in the stars. As they say, there's power in the planets. And the harnessing of those energies comes with higher magnitude when those key alignments happen, right? And if you're not familiar with the work, I would actually suggest a brief segue to go to my Rumble channel, the V-Cypher community, and go back onto page 2. And start about here with the New Jerusalem and Earth's Hidden Destiny videos onward. You know, this is the oldest, and then onward through all the way to the first page, where if you watch all these all the way through to now, to, you know, last month's video where we decoded Super Bowl 53, you'll have a better grasp on the discussion topics today. So, brief kind of just public service announcement for those that are, what the fuck is this guy talking about already? Yeah, you're probably going to want a little bit more of a primer before you understand some of the spell casting with the stars that we're talking about. But for those that are coming to the channel that have gone through, you know, the rigmarole of being up to date on our findings with the V-Stag, there are some key conclusions that we're going to be drawing with the Great American Solar Eclipse bookend, like what we've called or ascribed as the famous 7 years of tribulation that even the Bible talks about. Here it is right here, illustrated on this chart or graph or graphic of the United States. This path right here shows the path of totality, as they say, of when the first eclipse happened in 2017, August 21st to be exact. And then this path right here is the one that's yet to come. 2024, April 8th, just a couple weeks out at this point. This is the key X marks the spot moment here. It's funny, we've also shown, I kind of touched on this last month in the Super Bowl video, that Salem, all of these cities of Salem are along the X marks the spot path of both eclipses, almost like, you know, like witchcraft and Salem witchcraft. And I mean, this is an example of, guys, like this is so mind-blowingly premeditated by people that practice magic. And what it's tied to, it's not even funny, but we have some conclusions to draw right now about what to expect around this key date, because back when we were doing the findings on the V-Cypher channel, we mainly focused around the winter solstice reset ritual, what that had to portend for the future. And, you know, a lot of the Batman comic decodes that you see behind me. Honestly, I'm in the process of decoding Batman Year 3, which in our calendar ritual decode of Batman, you would know this would actually line up with what was happening in 2023 in the United States. Year 1 was 2021, year 2 is 2022, year 3 is 2023. So again, that would have you believe that there was a reset that already occurred back in year 0, 2020. And that this reset is persisting with, all the trappings of things that in a popular culture would also reset alongside it. There's clearly an aim that the elites and the controllers of this narrative were trying to cast upon us all of this time and culminate in a very key moment now, which is this April 8th ritual. So we're going to draw a lot of stuff together today. Right from the get-go, before we lose our heads about all the directions I have to go, I am going to be continuing on, first of all, with some themes from last month from the Super Bowl. Jim Carrey is going to play a huge part in this episode today of how the V-Steg is showing up in popular culture because, as you saw, Ace Ventura, Lambda V, the steg is even apparent just in the titular usage of the main, I don't know, they're not individual proper nouns. I'm trying to say like the main proper nouns, but Ace Ventura itself is a proper noun. The main proper noun of the movie title. I'm trying to make my words almost sound more complex than they need to be. But anyway, Jim Carrey is going to factor into this, and we're also going to look into some old connections that we even drew back in the time where the Super Bowl was mixing in with the Wrestlemania portions. House of M is still largely at play, as we showed last month in the Super Bowl video, guys. And the mind control that is veiled over us and the storylines that are being portrayed instead of what's actually real. So WrestleMania is even going to come into it today. And how that is very much carrying forth from some of our Susquehanna alchemy investigations from the time of Super Bowl 55. Philadelphia was a really key place. That's actually where WrestleMania is being held this year. And then we're going to go all the way through and see how Batman is a through line for all of it. Remember, guys, Batman is the key character in the Mayan reset. The Mayan reset of the calendar. All these resets, right? 2012 is the Mayan reset. We have 2020, which is almost like the perceptive reset. And then we have which is like the winter solstice reset ritual. That's what we were determining at that time with the monuments that we were finding in the Earth Grid Control Network. Earth Grid Control Network is going to come into it today, guys, because Death Stranding, oddly enough, was forecast back into the steganography of things during the Super Bowl. But it's this comic in particular, The Long Halloween, the calendar ritual. Batman is a signifier of the Bat God from the Mayan times. The Aztecs looked at this. I forgot what the name of the Bat God is. I have to go back to the research. But the Bat God is the harbinger of the reset of things. Swoops in, a new age begins. And Batman also signifies kind of like the humanity that's within us, the struggles, the manifestations of the struggles that we're going through during that reset, during our perceptions, having to battle with things that we don't necessarily accept. That's why Batman's life is just such a heroic struggle. But anyway, the Wizard of Oz is going to come into this in addition to Batman. So we have to just start somewhere. And where we're going to start today is actually back to tie the steganography of the ritual of the reset of the X Marks the Spot event that's coming up on April 8th into place. We're going to start with For All Mankind, the TV show on Apple TV that has V-Steg right in its own titular logos. For those unaware, it's an alternate history It's an alternative history account of NASA's path through development in the 60s, public development. The popular narrative, especially with those that think we landed on the moon, right, is that this was saw this very heroic journey with Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and we conquered much. We were the first ones there. I have a sneeze coming on, guys. Just a sec. Sorry, the windows are open all the time here in Phoenix area. Last several days. It being the equinox, it's the friggin' blooming time of spring. So I'm contending with that. Anyway, this is just the For All Mankind wiki, but obviously, I mean, this is the title of the main headline title of the show. Do you see the lambdas present here? Lambda mind control, right? Or misdirection, or reframing of what's supposed to be real, right? So right out of the gate, I always look at series, at video games, at anything in popular culture really that has the key signifying trait of the steganography at play as a marker. And this is actually the alternative NASA that they created for this story, because as in our popular culture, remember, we were the first ones to the moon. We were so heroic about it. But this series actually casts the Soviets as the first ones to reach the moon. And it's funny because you can actually see it in the logo of NASA that the V-Steg is apparent. The actual logo of this is what's funny about the V-Steg. What's real and what isn't real usually is denoted as false or not true or out of sync by the representation of the lambda, really, truly the lambda. When that's present, we know that we're probably looking at something that is 180 degrees in the opposite direction, similar to the vernal equinox example from the beginning of the episode. But what we find at the For All Mankind narrative is interesting, because the very NASA logo that's real, which is, I don't even have the real NASA logo, do I? NASA logo. Here we go. It itself, the real NASA logo, is constructed with lambdas. But the logo of NASA in the show is constructed with deltas. So the thing that the V-Cipher tells us about this is that because lambda is present in real life, that means that, and I think most people have come to understand this, NASA is lying to you. The real NASA is lying to you. So what's going on behind the scenes of the real NASA lying to you? Well, we can maybe get a clue if we follow the V-Steg to this show and we look at the delta version of lambda that's portrayed in this show. And I've always supposed that since this show's inception that this was the case, that what we were watching on this narrative or this fake version of NASA was actually closer to reality for what unfolded truly. It's funny because the early episodes had Wernher von Braun in them. I mean, he was cast as the head of NASA. The Saturn V rocket, remember, as Saturn is going to come into the episode today with the mind control stuff. I mean, this might actually have to factor into the video today. So I'm going to pull up my Rumble page one more time. There's a lot to Saturn too, guys. This video here, in addition to the winter solstice reset video onward, but this video here, Saturn and the moon, give some context to, believe it or not, how the V-Steg would point to it as them, the Saturn and the moon both working in conjunction in some sort of a way that are an instrument of sorts to help or assist control the mind. So the steganography with the Saturn V rocket, of course, as NASA actually built and called this, based on the Nazi scientist's design and Wernher von Braun heading up NASA at the time, all of these things are in the show were characteristic of what we can look at as the cultural iconic moments that we kind of thought we knew. But what really happens in the show is that the Russians beat them to the moon. And this is a key understanding for us to first wrap our heads around, because the Russians are in the narrative all through the Soviet era. You know, it's a central point of mind control. I mean, it's like almost peak centralized mind control with that these poor Russians were subject to with the Bolshevik Revolution. And they're still dealing with those consequences today, as is really the whole world, because the Jesuits are at the head of it. So the Jesuits, a.k.a. the Nazis, a.k.a. the Khazarians, a.k.a., you know, the Israeli Mossad control structure. But the Russians are central to this whole storyline also, as well as what's going on with you know, the key hot point of the day. You know, ever since Trump was in office, there's always some sort of demonizing characteristic that's cast on Russia. So there's something to Russia, and there's something to this story. And I think there always has been. If you're interested in watching the show, it really does offer an alternative version of history that, other than a gay president, you know, becoming something that everybody was aware of. I mean, we kind of know that now with, you know, Barack Obama being what he is. It's not totally unrealistic, again, of what it's showing us, but the timelines are off on some of those key events. But it does offer like this interestingly alternative view of what happened in space, and offers us a look at there actually being colonization on Mars and the moon both, which I think has probably already begun and is underway also, and probably in conjunction with the Soviets originally. But this is weird because, and the reason why I'm giving you guys all this context is because for some reason, with the steganography of all of this, there's even weirder steganography in the NASA logos that we look at here. So I don't know if you guys are looking at the same patterns I am, but here's, again, going back to the real NASA logos. So this is what the real NASA logo looks like. This is what the one in the show looks like. And this is the one in the show. You've got a delta, and then this is the little swoosh pattern is got a leg that goes behind the circular element, and this one is all in front of the circular element, and it's all faced the other direction. You also have this white comet thing that's orbiting it, and you have the same thing over here too. But it's a mirrored effect, right? It's like everything we've discussed with The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland and all things V-Stag, it's backwards. But it's being backwards isn't the most curious thing. When you compare the pattern of it to the overlay of the United States eclipse, what do you see, right? You see, okay, I did put it down here. Okay. You see almost an exact match, guys. You see this little swoosh pattern and the swoosh pattern on the NASA here, on the fake one. That's what's crazy, is the fake one from the show lines up, at least from an orientation perspective, over the top of what the actual eclipse event is going to signify. Again, here's the real one. I don't know why that is. And I also am currently trying to figure out why there would be significance to the red arm of the one that's coming up being hidden behind the orb. My gut has told me that that's probably because it's the one that we need to be paid attention. This is the eclipse that needs to be paid attention to the most. but I don't understand why the one from 2017 is hidden from the original pattern. But the other thing is too, guys, like this is only when it's highlighting the annular eclipse. So it's only when you disregard the fact that we've looked at the X marks the spot a lot in the past, but when you add this annular eclipse, that was one that happened back in October of last year, when you add this into the mix, do you get this pattern? And then the only element missing then is this circular object, right? Well, let me show all of you this 12P Pons-Brooks comet. So at the time of the upcoming eclipse, April 8th, the one that goes north, that goes in a northeasterly direction, the one from 2017, the one that we're talking about there being a hidden signified arm or some significance behind in For All Mankind NASA logo, if we're just following the steganography, is actually going from the northwest down to the southeast, so southeasterly direction. When you look at that pattern and then wonder about the other thing that lines up with it, this comet right here actually is the only thing when you look at the backwards logo that lines up with the eclipse pattern, right? So you actually don't have a major signifying line going through to match the eclipse pattern. Instead, you have this little comet thing. Well, this is too much of a coincidence to be funny, right, guys? I mean, here's this occurrence that I was able to find of this 12P. It's like its designation. For I'm a novice, guys. Truly, like if I'm speaking out of turn with the astrological naming convention of things, it's some sort of naming convention that they use, and it's comet 12P. It's also known as the Pons-Brooks comet. This is not something that I'm very versed in, other than identifying it and showing that during the eclipse, you'll be able to see this comet. It will be in the sky during this eclipse coming up on April 8th. So when you tie those things together, the steganography completes itself, because this comet is basically the same event if it's steganography for this eclipse, which it sure as shit looks like it is. And this comet that's only viewable during the eclipse is viewable right there. And it's happening at the same point in time. Here's the path of that eclipse. I was able to find, or not the eclipse, but the comet. Here's the Pons-Brooks comet. I mean, guys, this is one of these comets that takes like 75 years to orbit. I mean, here's its orbit pattern. But it's not like this thing comes in every day. If you know more about the comet, let me know. Send me some information on it. I'm simply showing all of this because of the fact that this needs to be pointed at, that the steganography is showing us something. I mean, this event that began with the rituals that we painted out with the winter solstice reset, this was always going to be that bookend. This was one of the reasons why I stopped doing the content for a while, is because there just wasn't a lot else to prove other than the medial cultural items that we can point at along the way, just like we do in these videos. And I'm doing again, just kind of kickstart the engine again with all this, to show that it is still current and still happening, and it's never stopped, never will, until whoever uses the V-Steg is out of the picture. But this shows how this is all interconnected into what we're supposed to accept, I think, in terms of what is being cast upon us, the humanity that lives here on Earth, all sorts of different ways. I'm going to get into future episodes and on my Substack, because I am starting one of those, by the way, where I will be able to get deeper into the written investigations of things and explain this stuff a little bit more concisely for people that are finding the work for the first time. But in that, it's beginning to look a lot like these patterns are kind of culminating now around this coalescence, this culminating moment around April 8th, that all of the VSTEG moments have kind of matched up and kind of point at and shed a light on for some reason. And I don't yet know what's going to transpire on April 8th, but it's interesting that so much is being building up with these emotional tensions toward that event. So with all of this in mind, guys, the VSTEG is heavy. Again, with whatever's going on in space, NASA is a space icon. The moon is parked there, right? I mean, the moon was parked there to make these patterns. It's a spaceship. It's a friggin' space station. If you can't handle that objective opinion on this channel and you just think I'm too crazy, again, shut it off or go watch my previous videos like I'm telling you to and start building the doubt from there, from the cases that we make on all that stuff instead. But there's a structure, there's a mechanism to this, there's an aim that's tried, that some group of people is trying to achieve. And so what is it going to be? I suspect banking related. I've always suspected history related. I've always suspected religious related. Is there going to be something that topples all of them all at once? And is it the inclusion of some Elohim intervention in some sort of a friggin' way? I don't know. But keep an eye on it, guys. I mean, for one, I'm not the only one talking about it. Jeff Berwick's talking about this stuff too. But before we leave, and I'm gonna show you guys like some opinions that some people have sent him. He's actually sharing the information secondhand about what may or may not happen on the eclipse, and to give some sort of a semblance of an idea. But just to give you guys a little bit of a tie-in to some other Psy-Op stuff that's going on, and why the For All Mankind steganography, if you guys think like, oh, how could he possibly believe that, Russia would make it to space before us? The For All Mankind show illustrates the collaboration between, in the background, in the secret, the Russians and the Americans. And I would submit to you that there's this channel called Bald and Bankrupt. He's a very popular, I think, very CIA Psy-Op channel that was touring Russia all throughout the Ukraine war situation. And it's a bizarre channel, guys. It's really out there. But I mean, it's one of these vlog channels that people think is like actually real. And I think for certain can't be certain about it. With a strong degree of suspicion, I think that he is very much involved with misdirection somehow with this stuff. But what he found in his channel, and what he showed to everybody was that when he was touring the old dilapidated cosmonaut Russia, he was finding stuff like this all over the place. And what you're seeing here in his video is an old rundown hangar for one of their space divisions, like one of their cosmonaut space divisions. And he broke into it, and what he found was a space shuttle. Space shuttle that was parted out, that doesn't work, but sure as shit. I mean, you see what I'll link this for you guys if you want to watch it. It's just, it's horrendously boring. Vlogs style videos don't do it for me. But this, he's showing this shuttle, not a set, not a movie anywhere. Like, this is an old rundown space shuttle that is essentially the same design as what we have in the United States. And nobody knows anything about this stuff. Oh, well, the Russians, they just go up there and connect with the International Space Station, right? Like, it's weird that we know so much about the shared information with all this stuff, but yet don't know nearly everything. And this is kind of one of those moments I'm just trying to trying to share with the person that is coming to this and like, wait, what's going on with whatever V-Stag is, to show that this is the kind of misdirection that hides truth from you. And when V-Stag is relevantly there right there in the popular culture for God and everybody to see, you are wise to look into what it is hiding from you. Okay. So back to the eclipse. Jeff Berwick, I don't agree with his suppositions, guys, about the Kali Yuga. We have our own everything about almost with hyper novelty, as Cliff High talks about this period of time. You know, those of you who follow his work know what I'm talking about. There's so much that you almost have to like disclaim about, okay, I'm going to share this guy's view, but I don't have his same viewpoints on XYZ. We of course even think we're going into the age of Leo, as I described earlier in this particular episode. Jeff is one that actually thinks that we're in the Kali Yuga, which I don't think is the case. I think we are in the Dwapara Yuga, the ascending Dwapara Yuga, and that we are going into the age of Leo within that ascending Dwapara Yuga, the Bronze Age, as you might call it. We're about 6,000 years from the Golden Age. But, you know, so I'm sharing this video letting you guys know that he's sharing secondhand a video that somebody sent him that's relative to the eclipse. But his belief on everything is that like everything, whole world is going to end and blow. You know, he's going on a ranch and sequestering himself away, and that's his deal. I think it's probably still a good call to do something like that, but his reasoning for it is not sound in the V-Stag concepts, let's say. But here's a little bit of an idea on what some people are saying out there about the solar eclipse and why they're freaking out about it, and why there's just something that maybe the populace at large can't quite put a finger on, but that everybody's finally tuned into with all of these calendar rituals that are finally coming to a head. You know, this is where humanity is at. Here, I'll just give you a play.
All this kind of stuff, and there's been all kinds of stuff coming out about it. Like this guy who's on YouTube somehow said that this is what a sheriff told them after they had a call about the April 8th eclipse.
The director of the Lake County Emergency Management Agency told me they've been preparing for the solar eclipse now.
Do you guys see the V-Stag? So this is a story about a local preparatory preparedness, you know, like a preparedness coalition. It's like some municipal structure that the city enlisted by the police department to have like some preparedness plan for the solar eclipse, and they've been prepping for it for years. But look at the V-Stag on the time capture here, guys. It's ABC channel 5, and it's 5:55 when the story breaks. So okay, more V-Stag, just pointing out.
Now, for about 2 years.
They've been preparing for this for 2 years. Imagine that, for 2 years. That sounds like a lot of preparation going into that. And in the video yesterday, I told you the military is getting into a building that they won the Allied War in World War II, which is Idabel, which you can find that video after this video. But let's get into this right now. So they don't want any communications between us. And what is the big event that they're doing? This is what he told me inside of Homeland Security yesterday they were talking about.
I don't know any of these people he's talking about, guys. So I don't know who he's referencing. Jeff doesn't do a good job of referencing it. Showing this only for, again, a pulse on what the population is thinking and going through right now, whoever this guy is. It's a representation of how a certain sector of people are thinking about this upcoming event. Your Telegram channel types, you know the kind I'm talking about. Most of you are probably that type yourself, so.
During the solar eclipse, while people are all out there looking, they're planning, the intel that they've got is a possible biological attack on people while the solar eclipse is freaking happening. Yes, I just said that while the solar eclipse is happening. And you're like, okay, well, where are they going to do that? Well, all the people out for the solar eclipse, I'm potentially believing could be targets. Okay, so this is not speculation. This is...
I mean, that's exactly what it is speculation. He's not... I mean, these are all speculations. It's interesting, nonetheless, that this is what's being said. For the very reason of, if you go back, just go to the eclipse, X marks the spot. What's being talked about is the new WEF's biological weapon, Disease X. I think I showed in the last video that I did for last month with Super Bowl 53, Zenith of the Alphas video, where Disease X and the Super Bowl X were all tied together. And this year's eclipse had a lot to do with Disease X relative to the gematria and the symbolism that he finds in numbers and things like that. He's got a unique eye that I don't have. But his work was even signifying this. So, I don't know. Disease X. X marks the spot, April 8th. There's another marker. Remember, the medical, the financial, the historical, the religious. All of these frameworks are lies. And there is a new framework that is emerging that is without anybody telling you what you can or can't think, because honestly, government is part of that too, and its days are numbered with this stuff. So it is one thing that we can look out for on April 8th is if Disease X comes along with it, and that meme starts circulating around the internet, well, then maybe this guy has some credence to his little doom session that he's thinking for himself. I'm not saying that he's wrong either, but I would correct the record with this guy and say this is speculation. Speculate all you want. That's what we do on this channel too. but you know, it's just saying.
Totally inside information about what they said. And they're talking about how to...
This is what I mean, like totally inside information with this guy that we can't validate. It's just like some military guy. He's got
first responders' mental health. They need to prepare because their mental health is going to be very, very, out of whack after this. So when he told me that they potentially might be doing a biological attack, that's the intel. Who's going to be doing it, I don't know. But however, I looked deeper, and then I seen that 3 weeks ago, none of us was paying attention to the fact that the FBI just had a training drill for a biological attack, and they're getting hospitals ready for it. So I want you to look at this.
I mean, that shit's happening all the time too, to be fair. Like this stuff is all weird, but this is all the stuff that's always happened in front of Jade Helm. And I mean, you guys remember Jade Helm. COVID, the whole COVID op, a lot of this stuff was also occurring because their whole, what did they call it? Not Agenda 2030, but their whole ritual they did the year before in China to simulate it. They had all this stuff occurring everywhere. So maybe they are planning something. Maybe these are the markers. They're good things to pay attention to. But I don't know. It's somewhat funny to me when people think about some of this stuff as being, definite. Like this is what's going to happen. I simply don't know, guys. I think it is interesting though that Disease X, as the mimetic component to the VSTAG, is potentially rearing its head this day.
This video clip real quick.
We'll finish it out.
And just look at what we all missed and how this lines up with the agenda.
Staff at multiple...
So another news story to bookend it. So this guy's opinion piece was bookended in front of course, that other news story. Look at this news story. Different agents... controlling this news network. You got the CBS eye, but nonetheless, 55 degrees outside, 5.5. It's on the half hour. So you have some hidden V-steg here too, where you've got, if you were to write this out 5:30, it's halfway past the hour, so 5.5. It's just funny, guys. 11 times 5 is 55.
Local hospitals are now better prepared to handle a potential emergency. The FBI spent time in 3 ERs today in our area, walking doctors, nurses, and other staff through what they could do in case of a bioterrorism disaster. 11 News reporter Elmer Mejia Segastumi is joining me live from Penn.
So you guys are seeing all of the rampant stories, the V-steg that underlies them, the preparatory nature of closing schools down. I mean, look, even to go along with what these guys are saying, here's over on Twitter, there's a lot that's surfacing that's deploying, that's suggesting the National Guard are going to be deployed in the path of the eclipse. I think it's funny, there's V-steg even in the story, right? It's estimated about 100,000 people may be in the country for that event. The 22 members of an elite chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear unit will be housed in Broken Bow. 22 members, right? 22. V is the 22nd letter of the alphabet. V-steg. It's just hilarious. 55s, 22s, 5.2s. 5.2 is a length of a pace. So you get 52. You get 25, which is 5 times 5. You have all of these recurring numerological things, guys. So you've also got this story that was on AccuWeather, where hundreds of schools in path of total eclipse cancel classes over the safety concerns. So they're premeditating that classes are going to be closed. The National Guard's going to be out. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. So it's not like this comet might have anything to do with it either, right? I mean, if we really have this comet that's happening at the same time as the solar eclipse, guys, what are the energies even going to be like? This is such a weird, auspicious time that we're going through. We're already kind of feeling the onset of the eclipse. It usually happens this time of year. Before it happens, things start to get weird, kind of like the full moon does, but just in a much more magnified way. So if that wasn't enough, we kind of have to talk about like the deeper implications of this, right? I mean, in the Super Bowl video, go back to the channel here. I will show you again. Click on the Taylor Swift icon here from Super Bowl 53. Still got some Taylor Swift gripes that we've got to get to in this episode too. But go back and watch this and you'll find out that this Hardman was the guy that scored the winning touchdown, all sorts of things with Die Hardman, and how I was relating the Earth Grid Control Network back to the video game Death Stranding, because this character Die Hardman was central to this game. And for those unaware, Death Stranding is a video game about the metempsychoses. It is a game about the player character who is working off their karma by delivering packages. These are figurative. I mean, they are representative of individual karmans that the person didn't get through in their life. So they're resolving things in their mind, and there's a baby on the other end that's being grown, which is their next incarnation. And so their psyche and their metempsychoses, which is a concept that's gone over in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This is what the Egyptian Book of the Dead, it really digs into itself, is the journey of the soul in the afterlife and what it then becomes in its journey to then manifest in another life. This goes very deep. I mean, I've done videos on this in the past. Here's one of my videos that I've done. I will link it in the description. But this Bridges logo is part of the Death Stranding game that you see here, this little patch, and it is the signifier of Die Hardman. Die Hardman is the administrator of the Bridges network. So what I was tying back from last week with the Super Bowl video is that this Die Hardman character was a meme that was in play with whatever is going to be happening relative to the Super Bowl. Hardman being the guy that with the winning touchdown and the 12 on his back. Remember the number 12 on his back, which is he's the key calendar ritual guy, because The whole calendar is messed up. Probably 13 months, not 12, right? 28 days is a moon cycle, a month, 1 month. Remember the Joe Montana rituals and the Warren Moon rituals all behind all these latest Super Bowls too? All of this stuff ties in to our conclusions that this Hardman guy is really, really important with what's going on. The Earth grid itself is something that, before we move through those topics too deeply, again, we've got to show a grid. This is the Earth grid. This is the ley line network of the grid, a relief of it. Up above it is a buckyball. This is the energetic structure that the Earth actually takes on in its semi-spherical format. The energetic underpinning of the Earth is a buckyball. Planets, planetoids, they all are. So this is actually a propagation method by way of the phi ratio that nature creates. This is, I mean, Buckminster Fuller is a wonderful scientist to go look into the work of. We're not gonna dig too deeply into his work tonight, but that's why it's called a buckyball. Buckminster Fuller is behind its theoretical understanding. So what we're concerned with is how the ley line network, these actual kind of invisible undercurrents, these energetic undercurrents that are actually under the ground in the aquifer system a lot of the time, and they kind of look like this. There's this grid pattern that they make. And this is why key points on Earth are more energetic than others. Look at where this is, the Bermuda Triangle. Everybody is very much aware of the anomalous nature of what happens there. It's this magnetic anomaly. There's a bunch of other stuff behind that too, but I mean, these all have intersecting points. So the bridge network logo, as I was talking about in this video, and also matching up with Florida Maquis' work at the time. We don't have time to get into his stuff, but I have to plug him, guys. I actually might watch that clip. We'll get a little bit into the Florida Maquis stuff in order to plug him. But the understanding way back when I first started making content, was that this video game, because there was so much V-steganography in it, you have to understand, I didn't just willy-nilly put this thing into existence. Everything that I've ever done on this Decode channel has everything to do with there being rampant V-steganography hiding messages in whatever the medium is, whether it's a book, whether it's a video game or a song or a TV show or whatever. And in this case, this was a very breakthrough moment for the work, because it showed that in the V-stag in the video game that there was this control grid housed in DC. This is the DC Parasite Network that I was calling at the time, because its central focal point in the logos of the Death Stranding video game was pointed at DC. And this web, this spider web of capture, mind capture, was going out all over the entire country. And you can even, if you were to broadcast this web outward, it would swallow the whole world. Well, it was also indicative of what ley lines were, and you know, it was inferring the power of spell casting into ley lines. Okay, so back to Die Hardman. Die Hardman again is the administrator of this and making sure that this is running in the metempsychoses the way it should be. And in the video game, as we've gone over, and as this video points out, you are trying to make it through this hijacking process. Your mind, your nous, as the character, the main character in the video game is attempting to get through, is to get his mind rectified and really downloaded into a new vessel, into a new human. This brings us to this moment where I didn't know this was even happening, but Death Stranding 2 is coming out. I've looked into this, and apparently, I'll get into a more conclusive Death Stranding decode, because I started a lot of my channel here with some of this stuff. It deserves its own like Substack deep dive, and that's what I intend to get into. But Death Stranding 2 is coming out, and as you can see, the child is no longer in a tube like it was in the first game. The child is born. we've talked about this too on the channel, where there's a 9-month gestation period inside the womb and a 9-month gestation period outside the womb. So I have to believe that this is the second half. This video game is about the second half of the metempsychoses, the part where you're downloading into your new life. So what this will portend, I don't know, but it is interesting that it is now being released on the back of Hardman. Remember what's the guy's name? Chiefs Hardman. This guy, Nicole Hardman, the guy that caught the winning catch in the Super Bowl. Was number 17, then he was number 12. We went through all the numerology significance of this in the last one, but here he is catching the ball. By the way, I need to look into this a little bit more, but Corn Dog was the name of the play that they ran, Corn Dog, and I keep forgetting to look into that for if it has any significance. But Hardman is really what we're looking at in terms of casting this back to look at the V-Stack even in my ad, guys, 5.5% certificates. Just funny. But since Hardman was back in the popular culture, we knew that the Death Stranding thing was going on. The other thing is that this Earth Grid Control Network isn't my finding. It's one of this Florida Maquis guy on the internet, and he's made most of these videos private. But what he was doing at some point in time, several years back, was he was finding all of these weird pentagonal energy markers. And this is actually how we know that the Earth is a buckyball, is because interlocking pentagons and hexagons is what makes up a buckyball. And it fractally repeats itself all the way down into these little joints, as I call them. And, you get pentagons and hexagons forming in nature. And what the Florida Maquis actually stumbled onto here was the Earth Grid ley line network. And he was painting with incredible accuracy only by finding, zooming in on the Google Earth and finding these weird like discolorations and anomalies, and where blank spots were, where trees weren't growing, weird looking shapes in the middle of the ocean that were always pentagrams. And he would draw the lines in between them. And over time, he created enough of this grid where he locked all this behind his paywall. You can't publicly get this stuff anymore. But he did make several videos about it that are still public, that you can still kind of access. But it's wonderful work. I'll have to subscribe to his work, honestly. I think that's probably something I'll do, is subscribe to Florida Maquis' work. And I think he would probably think I'm a nut job for decoding it the way that I do. Or interpreting it the way that I do. He interprets it a certain way, I interpret it another. But I think it's incredible research that he went through. He went through this laborious, painstaking process where he was just looking at Google Earth, and it just literally, he'd find a reference point and draw a straight line. Pretty soon the work became pretty easy to find, because he, along the line, just as you would find in the Earth Grid network here, all these straight lines, he was interlocking and connecting all of these energetic anomalies. Okay. It's important for everybody to understand this, because in order for you to get a kind of a respect for what mind control is and how it can be cast upon us, it's not just using glyphs in our popular media and our pop culture that gets us to sway our perception on things. It plays a part. But just like in remote viewing, if you know how that works, where you've got a random set of numbers that are assigned of an image that somebody has to psychically interpret, the V-Stag is in the same way a programmatic casting of certain glyphs that have certain memes attached to it. So it's a little bit different from the remote viewing techniques, because there's actually much more intent put into a non-random series of glyphs. But we have to get into Konstantin Miles' work for just a sec. I thought about putting my book set up over there, but we're not going to be reading enough pages today. We're just going to read this one, and then we're going to read some Wizard of Oz stuff later. Actually, it's going to get interesting. But that factor into why this pentagonal stuff matters. Okay, so there's pentagons that we were just showing you on the Earth grid itself, interlocking pentagons and hexagons. But the other thing that the VSTAG illustrates is a hidden understanding of this structure here, the pentagram itself, mathematically. We got into it a little bit in the last episode too, but guys, this is the VSTAG is all about these angular numbers: 108 degrees, 36 degrees, 72 degrees, and phi. Phi is what they call the phi ratio, the golden ratio, the expression ratio for life. That's how you measure the expression of life and change occurring in time. It's like pure potential in its mathematical expression, right? And that it's tied to the pentagram itself, because all of these interlocking triangles that you see all throughout the pentagram all throughout the pentagram itself, it's made of 3 of them. If you see 1, 2, 3, these triangles are actually the secret sauce of the life expression. That it actually more goes down to the Nikola Tesla's 369, because you have 3 triangles interlocking into one larger shape, the pentagram, and they all have 3 sides. And each of the sides in this arrangement, I'm trying to use specific but simple language, guys. Sometimes it's hard for me. I search for words to be simple, not complex. But in this arrangement, you can see that all sorts of other triangles get created, and phi is always the length of that segment. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit more through Konstantin Mile's work to explain to you the further significance of the phi ratio, because what I'm going to attempt to do here is tie the phi ratio itself, the shape of the pentagram, and its expression into the glyph of V and the V steganography itself together in a way that I don't think I've done before, that shows you the mechanical structure of how I think and how it would seem that the cosmos and the instrumentation up there are being used on the mind to create a false perception. Konstantin Mile researched communication waves, and he is a brilliant Russian scientist, again, a Russian guy, that really, really dug into, and I'm going to show you also, he tied together the concepts of the phi ratio with the Earth grid in a way that we can jive with our friend Florida Maquis with. But he's speaking to the golden ratio in this book in a way that's tying it to the vortex of Nikola Tesla and his velocity framework of how you can capture velocity out of a vortex, out of an etheric vortex. Okay, so I'm going to read this section on the golden ratio that Konstantin Mile talks about. He's a little bit pithy. I'm going to do my best to describe this afterward, but here it is. There's the section of the book, the golden proportion. I'm going to read that to you. I'm going to read to you operably how the golden ratio 1.618 factors in, and maybe how there's a greater effect that we need to investigate on our minds and the Earth itself. Okay, so Tesla produced nearly 100 years ago a stability of vortices that had biological effectiveness and increased in high-frequency technical viewpoints in the domain of noise, the domain of unstable oscillating noise vortices. From a biological and medical viewpoint, especially here, the answers should be sought to questions concerning the electrical, environmental compatibility. The domain stretches from V, this is velocity. It's funny how V gets used so much, right? Even in placeholders for key terms. V equals C instead changes to V equals 1.618. So now you even have a steganographical tie-in to the denotation of the velocity of the propagation of vortices in the ether that Nikola Tesla determined that he could gain electrical current from, equated to 1.618. So what I'm saying here is that the electrical current potential that Nikola Tesla drew from the ether had something to do with calibrating it with an angular velocity of 1.618 as it would express with the phi ratio. And this had something to do with the electric current that he was able to draw from that. We are also suggesting that this is life itself and the expression to change things in life itself. It is the potential and creation of electricity itself, which equates to life, I think. So I think what Konstantin Miles is saying here is that the golden ratio, as Nikola Tesla found, that's what 369 really is, guys, is the secrets to 369 are in the pentagonal structure. Remember, the 3 triangles. And then then you can look at the vortex math that's created. And that's the whole VW vortex math that you can look at, and it creates certain patterns there. But those don't mechanically explain the structure of life being formed, the electricity itself coming out of the potential ether. So the golden, continuing with what Konstantin Miles is saying, he's saying that now V equals 1.618 times C becomes the boundary case for spontaneous conversions of waves into vortexes. This is what makes it possible, is whatever makes phi express in nature. The golden proportion describes the stability limitation where the field of vortices, after they have been formed, don't decay anymore. So it's also this point where, because the electricity is expressing, it's also stable, right? That is expressing it all. It's created this stability point where entropy is no longer created. It's created this perpetual thing. Like, we persist in life from a day-to-day basis, right? Until it ultimately decays. That electrical current decays. But the golden proportion that gets us here, that makes our thoughts and cognition patterns possible, is right there in that explanation. So he also goes on to say, from this velocity on the antenna, respective to the radiation source that hasn't got a limited near field zone, this now reaches to infinity. Only from this distant velocity I get onward do I give the field vortices the name neutrino. So then he's starting to get into, cosmic makeup of things, which doesn't really factor into what we're talking about. The one thing that is interesting to denote here on his equations, though, down here, do you see that? Whoops. The vortex is denoted with lambda right here in this line here. So over on the left side, you see the lambda vortex equals 1.618 times lambda times the wave form. He says this based on calculating wavelengths themselves, and lambda is the denotation for calculating the wavelength. This is also popularly done in Greek math. So I'm just trying to show you the precedent for lambda actually being used in conjunction with the phi ratio and manipulating the wavelengths associated with it. Okay? What I'm suggesting here is that to control the mind, to control and enact change upon the mind, you must hack the golden ratio. You must somehow hack the golden ratio that is a template that is cast upon our minds, and this waveform is our perceptive reality, right? And in order to enact a different perception, those waveforms relative to this, lambda times 1.618 times the waveform calculation, is kind of your these are the properties that one would use in order to make that change on your mind using some sort of instrumentation. That's what I'm trying to say. I was trying to stay away from cataloging the properties of what this equation signifies to limiting it in any way that it be used in only one specific way. What I am suggesting is that at the heart of mind control, the heart of true VSTEG mind control, I think you're going to find that the spellcaster is using that waveform. That's what I'm saying. I'm basically saying At the bottom of the sorcerer that uses V-steganography spellcasting, the waveform relative to phi is at the heart of all of it. It's the fundamental field equation, as Konstantin Mile puts it. Okay, so this is interesting because later in the chapter, same exact concept, he's actually painting these pictures of harmonic frequencies that are attached to different temples in different locales in ancient Egypt, in ancient Greece. And he's showing the resonant chambers inside them and how they interoperate alongside an attenuated phi ratio to create cathodes, these little cathode structures. What he's saying is these cathedrals are cathoderals, and they have some sort of electric current that can get beamed to them. And it's funny because where do you find temples? You usually find them right on key ley lines. So you have, at the end of all of this detour, trying to speak carefully, concisely, and not over explain this, guys. You have the very structure of the pentagram, and this is, I think, why you always see it upside down too. It's this bastardization of using this pure life-giving energy to misdirect. The pentagram is the representation of the life force. Okay, it's why Venus is revered. It's the goddess. It's the potential that comes and gives birth, and it's also the electric current, the electric potential to draw from God, from universe. But you can reverse its energies, or harness them in a way, rather. You don't reverse their energies, but you can depolarize them or repolarize them. We've talked about that before too. And it can be increased, the effect of can be increased if you're in a key structure, on a key ley line, on a key date, with astrology stuff going on. And this is why these spells are attempted at their highest when all of these convergences happen and when all of these things lead up to these key moments in time, like we're about to experience with this solar eclipse on April 4th. And is why I recommend so much caution when it comes up, because for whatever is being cast in these times, it's going to be a really, really heavy mind control spell. So Konstantin Mile, I'm going to, if you're interested in the Substack I'm going to do on him, you can find me on Substack, guys. I just made the account. It's Skullcap Savant. It doesn't have anything posted to it, but that's the format I'm going to reserve to doing the deep dive into this stuff, so I can get pithy myself and I don't get overwinded, and people on the internet don't get frustrated with me for over explaining a concept that I'm not a practitioner of. Just I'm just like a functional speculator. Okay. So this is why these key points in time on these ley lines, the Florida Maquis found, and what they may or may not have to do with speculating on the metempsychoses and Death Stranding too. What does this have to do with anything? Well, one thing's for sure is that we're like the perception spells have been so strong that the whole populace, especially since the end of World War II, and then especially since Jesus and whatever happened with Elohim intervention back at the time of Jesus and space aliens, genetic experiments that have either stopped or continued, or have left just a cargo cult and remnant of themselves to continue on with. Like, these are all the questions that we have to uncover. We know that it seems Jesuits are at the heart of this. Jesuits are at the heart of creating most of the casuistry and the V-Stag and the mind control. But for what purpose? What purpose does it have? And because of the inclusion of the Death Stranding metempsychoses, it leads one to believe that with the instrumentation of the moon and Saturn maybe being used in conjunction with each other as a mind control device. Again, here's the episode you want to watch to take a look at really what got to the bottom of it. This is the book that we were referencing most, the Ringmakers of Saturn by Norbert Berggren, former NASA scientist, long dead, 30 plus years, but saw some things out in space that would indicate that there is probably something else going on that we can't really comprehend relative to this instrumentation. But what does it have to do with hijacking us in the metempsychoses? Are we in some reincarnation harvesting loop? I wonder sometimes too, where some of these very VSTAG elicited frequencies are affecting us in some sort of a way we can't really get to the bottom of. And our metempsychoses is almost like this syphilis type of scenario. What is that guy's name? Syphilis? Sis Rock. Sisyphus. Yeah, I had it right. Sisyphus, the guy that pushes the rock up the hill to no end. Almost seems like the parable of Sisyphus sometimes, with some of this VSTAG stuff and the metempsychoses, and are we ever going to get out of these patterns? I don't know. Rudolf Steiner's Lecture V would seem to indicate that the eighth sphere is exactly this. We didn't go too far into the eighth sphere because we've done so much work on it, guys, but what is the eighth sphere and what is it capturing us in? What is Ahriman's trick? Does it have something to do with creating this VSTAG blanket, using us as some sort of, again, a network of cathodes, all these cathoderals, creating some electric potential that blankets us in the moon, and these rituals for the solar eclipse have such power because Dormammu or Ahriman. Remember, Ahriman and Dormammu are the same archetype. Dormammu was the one from, what was it? Doctor Strange. Yeah, Doctor Strange. The Marvel comic. That keeps humanity's minds in perpetual suffering to relive, like Groundhog's Day, over and over and over and over again, different incarnations. Sometimes I wonder if this is the Visage of Ahriman. Remember, we equated him to almost the Zero character in Metal Gear Solid 5, another Hideo Kojima game. VSTAG. The Hideo Kojima stuff, guys. I don't know what he is. If he's a Templar, like we've suspected in the past, he's clearly a heavy user of the VSTAG. And is it in service of trying to help us break through these mind control spells that are going to be heavy on us on the reset period? I don't know. I never do. But the Bridges Network, the Pentagonal Bridges Network from Death Stranding, I would just have you guys all think about what is actually possible with using a grid, an electrical grid the size of the Earth, to use, like, remember stadiums, the stadiums and the cathedrals, they're all on key ley lines too. The stadiums are big energy capturing devices for spell casting. So anyway, the metaphysical man, the solar eclipse. Everybody needs to remember this in the times to come. Our friend Nikola Tesla, right? So, moving on a little bit. Kind of on topic, but not. We have to start moving through some of the more popular culture stuff. This is where we're going to kind of complete some of what we started last month with the Super Bowl. Not really complete it, though. That's why I'm kind of puffing my chest. Not really a good word. Continue. The rituals that we found didn't just include Hardman with the Super Bowl. Taylor Swift was there, obviously. And then with all of the things we found out about Finkel and Einhorn, and supposed about the whole transgender agenda. And remember, A and V. A is just the cross member version of Lambda. And then that ties in with Ace Ventura and all the things we found out about the reveal, right? We'll get to this in a second. But Taylor Swift was at the heart of it. There's another thing that I kind of touched on that didn't spend too much airtime discussing, but there was a lot of people. There were a lot of people that were starting to lose their memories of the concert events they'd go to with Taylor Swift. Remember, stadiums, concert venues, mind control. What's happening at these venues that from a frequency perspective, using everything I just taught you about the phi ratio, what kind of an instrument, maybe attenuated from the moon or otherwise, could make people lose time, lose perceptions? Well, I'd submit to you that alongside this, there was a tweet that she put out, or that Isaac's Army put out, that showed this photo that Taylor Swift actually put on her Instagram. She did not tweet this. She put a photo of Saturn and the moon both being lassoed by gold and silver ropes, similar to a lot of the other V-steganography-based financial even rituals for the collapse and reset of that system that are in place. But not only that, but again, the mind control components are real here. You got silver and gold, Saturn and the moon orchestrating what? Being lassoed by these two individuals. Looks like a couple of diversity, equity, inclusion individuals to me. I think one of them is supposed to be Taylor, maybe, and the other is supposed to be somebody else. I don't know who it is, what it is. The symbolism was, the symbolism of it spoke for what it represents. So this was only after this and the Super Bowl are coming out, but here, this is all buttering us up, guys. This is all just buttering us up for these eclipse rituals. You see what is happening with Saturn. Saturn as the mind control device, the moon as the relay station for the eighth sphere, Ahriman as the trickster energy behind it all. I don't know if Ahriman is the embodiment of the Elohim's God. Even this is all just so confusing, but so clarifying as we go, right? As we break through it with the V-Steg. But it just brings us back to the Super Bowl, guys. You as a rehearsal, remember at the Super Bowl, the wide right ritual from the 90s was in play, which led to the making of the it led to the making of the Ace Ventura movie, where this guy Ray Finkel, number 5, just as I put in the jersey number on the cover of the episode, number 5 jersey. So Ray Finkel was number 5 and was the one that missed wide right in the movie. That was what tied the whole ritual together. By the way, all the number 3s that we, as kind of an adjunct to everything, remember the Damar Hamlin ritual from the year previous, number 3. Couldn't believe I left him out of everything I was decoding with 3. But since the Bills and the wide right ritual were so at play, the Damar Hamlin thing alongside the transgender Ray is, Finkel is Einhorn is Finkel thing. But we tied all this in because if you remember, what was it? Yeah, Dan Marino was in the commercials for the Super Bowls. The buckyball, he was haranguing the buckyball. Whenever you see the soccer ball, interlocking pentagrams and pentagrams and hexagons, we know that the mind is being played with, and they were kicking around the soccer ball like it was nothing in this Michelob commercial. And then the House of M, and plus the buckyball, plus the inclusion of the Ray Finkel ritual and Dan Marino being in this scene. Back to that here in just a second, but thought I'd let you guys all know too, as a preview for next year, with everything we're about to go through today, doesn't it just make sense that the Super Bowl next year is going to be in the Caesars Superdome? It's in New Orleans, and they changed the sponsors to Caesars. So Caesars Casinos, of course, the tie into Las Vegas and the Roman circuses. Caesars Superdome is next year. Anyway, this is all kind of, remember this V-Steg score in the Super Bowl, 5 times 5 versus, the 22 for the V. So, we're going to start here, guys. A lot of where not start here, but we're going to continue. We're going to kind of pick up the diverting thread that we're going to end with, because Jim Carrey plays a huge part in the V-Stag mind control themes and the misdirection in the political environment. He is who I suspect is Biden behind the mask. For Jim Carrey fans out there, we're going to get into this too, but he's donned many a mask at times, even in a movie called The Mask. And it was undeniable to me when I kept looking into this audio-visual. Remember, Ace Ventura, AV, audio-visual. Audio and visual are the two main sensory apparatuses that play into the media control, right? Audio and visual delivery of wavelength and frequencies using the phi ratio of in some variety or attenuated way are causing supposedly us to be out of phase with how to interpret this shit. And in the movie, as you can recall, he takes kind of the approach of just derobing her. We didn't show this last time, but when he derobes her, he's like, I'm kind of, he's trying to show that she's got a member because he's a transgender. It's the big reveal moment. But here's where Dan Marino comes in.
Oh boy. Psst. Ace, come here.
There he is, young Dan Marino.
Would you excuse
His
me
inclusion
for
in the
just
ritual.
1 second?
And Dan sees.
Ladies and gentlemen, my esteemed colleague, Mr. Marino, has just brought some new evidence to my attention. Now, history has certainly shown that even the most intuitive criminal investigator can be wrong from time to time. But if I am mistaken, if the lieutenant is indeed a woman, as she claims to be, then, my friend, she is suffering from the worst case of hemorrhoids I have ever seen!
There it is.
That's why Roger Podacter is dead! He found Captain Winky!
So the captain died, murdered. And of course, everybody in the police force is coughing up because I don't think Finkel slept his way around, but, certainly kissed his way around the precinct. So, interestingly enough, we've got the Jim Carrey thing here, obviously, the AV thing, as we're pointing out, the Dan Marino thing. That's what kind of ties it in with Super Bowl 53. But onward we go from here. We have some things that are going to tie, not necessarily with Jim Carrey, but with WrestleMania 40, en route to Jim Carrey. But the whole thing with Jim Carrey being the detective, that's what I'm trying to paint a picture of here, en route back to Batman. Isn't it funny with all the memes, the DC Parasite Network, DC Comics, which are detective comics? That's what all of this is to really think through and see the V-Stag. You have to be a detective. Ace Ventura is the pet detective. So it's almost begging you to look further into the detective story of this and how it all unfolds. Funny enough, that was the thread that I pulled, and I wasn't expecting so easily to pull up WrestleMania 40 after that. But it's only because of where we're going to come back to later in the video, guys. What we're going to discuss about some of Jim Carrey's later videos, and how it goes into the Man on the Moon movie and the Philadelphia, what we're going to get into with Philadelphia, and to the Truman Show. Okay. And then we're really going to talk about this for the better part of the conclusion of the episode of how this all ties into the likelihood that I see of Jim Carrey being Joe Biden. So, here we go. I'm going to go back to this screen here. There we go. My screen blacked out for a second. I don't know why. I had some sort of lapse. Anyway, back to it. Oh, before we get on with it, the other interesting thing about the Super Bowl, also Toby Keith seemed to be a ritual sacrifice for Taylor Swift. He was the person that first brought her onto the label. So as part of a lot of this stuff, it would seem that Toby Keith was sacrificed along the way. But here's our transition into I keep saying Super Bowl 40 because WrestleMania 40, it's XL. When I started pulling on the Ace Ventura thread, The Rock came into things. They just started because he was on the Joe Rogan Experience recently. And I don't know, it was just one of those things where universe caught my own research direction and sent it this way. And I was like, oh yeah, haven't really looked into WrestleMania yet. I bet this has something to do with something. And if you guys all recall also, The Rock was prominent earlier in the year. And I'm going to do a separate episode probably in the Substack again on the Maui situation and the blue protectant that you can put on for the lasers that aren't going to affect your structure that you dwell in any way if a space laser is aimed at your house. The Rock was pretty prominent with Oprah at that time with that Psy-Op. So there were some things going on that also then led me through and saw how he was involved with SNL and weird shit that The Rock would do at SNL. And then I saw the Jim Carrey SNL impression of Biden. And that's where I really started asking questions. And so I'm just telling you, that's how my head got through and around a lot of this stuff is I wasn't really led this direction to make a connection with Jim Carrey other than, oh shit, like this whole Ace Ventura ritual, the Truman Show, we've talked about a lot. I mean, the Truman Show is pretty obvious for how that factors into the V-Stag, but the moon is prominent in that. Anyway, WrestleMania is key because it's in Philadelphia this year. And part of what I don't know why my internet's freaking out. I think the memory on the computer's struggling. We'll get through this. Yeah, guys. The WrestleMania theme being in Philadelphia this year is interesting because part of the whole winter solstice reset ritual that we've mentioned way too many times on this episode before earlier is that in its occurrence, Philadelphia is a huge component because it was a big part of the elections that were going on at the time, and it was also what's called the Keystone State. And the keystone in an arch, when you pull it out, the whole thing comes collapsing down. And so there were a bunch of things, again, in that New Jerusalem Earth's Hidden Destiny video that we've talked about to go back and reference on the channel. If you'll see by watching this is there's so many damn coincidences that line up with the ritual of the winter solstice reset, the banking collapse, the Super Bowl that year, which was Super Bowl 55. I need to keep hitting weight on this thing until we're done with it. But the Super Bowl 55 and some weird V-Stag that was going on with the commercials in it that year had to do with the election. And Philadelphia was kind of the battleground for the swing of the election because it's where the most votes were up for grabs. It was like the swing, like if whoever won that state would have won everything basically, even with how things turned out with the fakery with the Dominion voting machines and such, But Philadelphia was the key place. So isn't it funny that a key point in the pop culture, WrestleMania 40, is happening in Philadelphia this year? And wouldn't you know that, look at the dates, April 6th and April 7th. They happened the 2 days before the eclipse. And that everything is literally just painted green as if it's the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz. It's so much V-Steg stuff. Just in the time it's happening, where it is, the branding package for this whole thing. And what they have as their main title card is Roman Reigns, again, the Caesar's Palace, Roman system of circuses and mind control, against Cody Rhodes, this guy that you couldn't have signify the younger, more like virulent form of Trump if you tried. You can definitely tell what they're going for here with his caricature. He's supposed to be like the American rebel coming here to destroy the Roman system. And they've got The Rock, Roman Reigns' actual cousin, coming in as the tag team, I think, against Seth Rollins. I don't know if they're going to do a tag team for this or not. But this is your
choose you, Roman Reigns.
This is your little promo.
We're going to take it to a whole new level.
The green behind Triple H too. You see all this green, guys? Super 2 nights. All right. So you have WrestleMania 40 happening in the 2 days prior to the Eclipse. Pretty significant in my eyes. If it weren't enough, you also have some other people coming back for it, like CM Punk. I don't think he's going to participate, but there's all of these, like, who was it? Is it Logan Paul or Jake Paul? Logan Paul. There are all these influencers that are now wrestling or in boxing too. And it's just, it couldn't be a more drummed up situation as wrestling goes, right? But as we've pointed out, it's kind of interesting how deeply tied all of the themes in wrestling and the NFL go a lot of the time. And it just kind of proves to the person that is discerning about the V-Stag apparent that there's a connection with the orchestration of them both. And to that orchestration, they naturally started doing all sorts of rollouts with The Rock and doing all of their promos during SmackDown and Raw. It seems like the last 4 SmackDowns were significant for the symbolism. What they've done is they've made The Rock into a bad guy. He was a good guy. He's like the people's champion before, right? As they wrote him into scripts. But this time he's on Roman Reigns' side because he's Roman Reigns' cousin. And he's paid tribute to Roman Reigns. This happens later on, like I think in this episode of SmackDown. But I had to show you guys that, of course, he's back to his old Versace-wearing caricature. If you look at, well, isn't it funny? Like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, right? We were just on the Rock thread, but like Rock, Versace, 90s. So if you go back to like the Attitude Era, here we go. You've got The Rock back in the Attitude Era when he used to wear Versace shirts. It used to be like his thing. You've got the bowl on his shirt, you know. So this is him back in the Attitude Era, late 90s, early 2000s. When I was a kid, a lot of people were watching wrestling back then. And that was his whole people's champion persona. Well, Versace is pretty V-Stag. I mean, if you ask me, it's pretty V-Stag. Versace shirts. Famous designer. A lot of these, you just have to wonder with a lot of these things making it into the popular culture. Anyway, going back to his appearances in the lead up to WrestleMania, because these appearances, as you can see, as you play them out, they are just promos for what's going to happen between Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. There's all this bourgeois and flamboyance and peacocking that happens, and that's why everybody packs these arenas when they come to town and they make all this content. It's just, yeah, the stories are ridiculous, but the symbolism is definitely here. So going back to the Mayan reset calendar, the first time The Rock makes an appearance for this whole thing was February 16th, after the Super Bowl. So this whole thing takes off just after the Super Bowl, and the connections start to play out. The Rock, in his segment, walks out to his entrance music and turns around, and they prominently show his vest. The Versace vest he's wearing here has a jaguar on it. Anybody who's looked through my Mayan calendar videos in the past know how apparent the V-Stag is with the reset ritual and how it ties in with Batman and the Mayan calendar. Here, I'll show you back at the. I'll show you. You'll naturally watch these episodes if you go back and watch the ones I was telling you to, but you'll learn about the Bat God, the Mayan reset, what the Jaguar has to do with it all. Because the Jaguar is actually the creature that is the keeper of the illusion. And that's all the Maya is, to see past the mind control. And that's why the Mayan calendar reset mattered, was because it would become, we as humanity, starting in 2012, would come into a time where the illusion would fall, and the keeper of the illusion, the Jaguar, would be the dominant force in this happening. And I forget some of those reasons why the Jaguar is the keeper of the illusion and the mirror. But it's the mirror and the Jaguar are very much the same. Like the way that Alice in Wonderland uses the mirror is the way that the Mayans use the Jaguar. Okay, so it's reflective of what we're supposed to be seeing with this ritual that's unfolding, with whatever, with whatever they're trying to keep over us as the illusion, in my opinion, is what it really signifies. Because, fuck, man, The Rock is one of them. But it's interesting. I mean, here's his vest. He comes out here. I'll show you. Like he's just mouthing off to the crowd. The tribal leader, Roman Reigns, he pays tribute to, and he's just kind of becoming the heel. He's becoming the bad guy because he's always traditionally been a good guy. Okay. The next week he comes out. Or 2 weeks later, he comes out, and guys, he's wearing another Versace shirt, another zoom in on the camera to show during his entrance music what he's wearing, and this one blew me away. I thought what it was to begin with was a white rabbit. As you guys could see, it looks like 2 ears and like a head. That's what I thought I saw when I was watching it just all the way through on the first playthrough of the video. But when you pause it, I was like, holy shit, that's actually a very famous statue that has very significant V-steg attached to it. And hold on, I had it pulled up here. Where did I put it? Here we go. The Myth of Cupid and the Psyche. This is the statue that's on the back. It's actually a statue that's being shown on the Rock's back. You see this? On the Versace shirt, you have the Myth of Cupid and Psyche. So this is where it just starts to get silly with the V-steg sometimes, guys. Because Cupid now, like, listen, Valentine's Day, it's funny that today I'm recording on the equinox. I didn't plan it this way, but there's all of this Valentine's Day ritualistic Cupid stuff going back. Remember also that alongside the Death Stranding stuff, at the same point in time, I was decoding some other items from within the game of Death Stranding that had to do with Cupid, Valentine's Day, and the mind control that is persistent in the metempsychoses process that the game is portraying. You'll have to go back and watch this video here if you want to get context on that. But the bottom line is Cupid is at the heart of it. So here we have, again, some sort of Earth Grid Control Network, DC Parasite Network, Bridges-esque, mind control signifying memology, tied right in with the Eclipse rituals. Remember, WrestleMania, the Emerald City. This is where the whole Wizard of Oz thing comes into it too, guys, because the breakthrough of what is ailing the noose, just like in the Wizard of Oz, when the poppies put them to sleep and then they wake back up right in front of the Emerald City. The Emerald City can put you to sleep, or you can look past it, and the emerald focus of WrestleMania 40 is apparent. Kansas City won the Super Bowl. Kansas, the Wizard of Oz. Kansas and the Emerald City paves the way to the Emerald City. There's some very, very, very deep-seated symbolistic things going on with these events this year. Of course, they always were going to be. I mean, right, guys? I mean, we've been forecasting this shit for years. By the way, Buffalo, I got this picture of Buffalo, this old picture of Buffalo from like late 1800s, And you can actually see that they used to have an obelisk there, an Egyptian obelisk in the town square. I don't know where it went. I need to find out where that thing went. I started to look to see if I could tie it into the Buffalo portion of this episode, but I didn't have enough time. Anyway, back to the whole rock thing, right? So the whole thing with the Cupid and the Psyche. So this is very much what we've always talked about Cupid being, is a spell on your psyche. Your psyche is your thought, your cognition, your patterning that you make up with your thinking. And the whole thing behind this is the story of Cupid and Psyche. It comes from an ancient Roman novel. Of course it does. Metamorphosis. What do you do in the metempsychoses? You metamorphosize. Why is Cupid so prevalent as a meme in the game? Remember, the whole system that you're using in Death Stranding, it's like a little computer system. It's your Q-PID. The letter Q, PID. This is all the memeology at play. Anyway, the story of Cupid and the Psyche comes from ancient Roman novel, The Metamorphosis. The great Greek goddess of love and beauty, Aphrodite, or Venus, there's our Venus reference, in Latin, is born from the foam near the island of Cyprus, from which reason she is referred to as the Cyprian. Aphrodite was a jealous goddess, but she was also passionate. Not only did she love the men and gods in her life, but her sons and grandchildren as well. Sometimes her possessive instincts led her too far. When her son Cupid found a human to love, one whose beauty rivaled hers, Aphrodite did all in her power to thwart that marriage. So Psyche is the love that Cupid finds, right, in the mystery, in the parable. And it's like finding himself. The love was of finding himself versus the version of the world and himself that his mother had cast upon him. And so on Wikipedia, and again, we usually use Wikipedia just because it shows what people can go access and what's actually out there for right in plain sight for us to see if it's interpreted correctly is the other thing. But as Wikipedia puts it, the kiss itself, which is the act that the statue is portraying, is it was commissioned in 1787. Here we go. By Colonel John Campbell. It's regarded as a masterpiece of neoclassical sculpture, but shows the mythological lovers at a moment of great emotion, characteristic of the emerging moment of romanticism. It represents the god Cupid in the height of love and tenderness, immediately after awakening the lifeless Psyche with a kiss. The story of Cupid and Psyche is taken from Lucius Apelles' novel, The Golden Ass, and it was popular in art. So here's the book where called The Metamorphosis is how this is all going down. We don't need to go too far into this, guys. It's very apparent what this is signifying, at least to me, relative to the solar rituals. The mind control. It's showing the V-stag at play with the symbolism and keeping us asleep, keeping our psyches asleep, right? This whole act of the entertainment industry, keeping our psyches asleep, is part of the whole process. I mean, it's not like we have, on this channel, I don't think, a connection in particular to any sports team or anything like that. But it is interesting that they're persistent to it all. It's just too funny sometimes. I'm often at a loss for words with stuff like this, guys, because it comes into the equation, is shown like this so readily in front of us, and we take it hook, line, and sinker. So anyway, that's what's going on with WrestleMania. The Rock has continued to wear these Versace vests. He wore almost what looked like a Mayan clock or a Mayan circle, but with tigers on it this time. Is not what is it? Chinese, because the Chinese New Year was right around the Super Bowl too, and we didn't do much, and I didn't look to see if it was. I think it was the Year of the Dragon. Okay. See, I was trying to tie some of the Chinese stuff to what he had on his back with, because right here is another significant moment where I'll show you in a sec. But the tiger was the only other symbolism that I could find on his vests. Now, the only time in the last couple of weeks where that the WrestleMania stuff, the WrestleMania build-up, the WrestleMania preamble that they try and hype with all these Monday and Friday. I think Monday is Raw and Friday is SmackDown, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm remembering correctly, The Rock didn't have anything but a Versace pattern on his back for this one, which was on March 8th. And the reason was because you can see the kind of caricature that they're starting to build up between the Roman system and, like I said earlier, Trump. So look at Cody Rhodes, the people's champion guy, comes into the whole arena, and everybody loves him. He's wearing the pink tie like Trump used to wear. All of the WWE universe. Like most of Trump's appearances on WWE, when he was in the ring, he was wearing the pink tie. Cody Rhodes has the blonde, kind of like hair like Trump. Just like when Trump goes into a UFC arena, the whole crowd's going nuts for him.
One way to avoid security.
Well, teach honest to try to save a few bucks.
And then his bud Seth Rollins. But I only wanted to show this to you because it's this whole narrative that the buildup is painting toward, like they're like characterizing Cody Rhodes almost like the Trump guy, and The Rock is like the evil empire. It's something else. It's something else. So the lessons that persisted from there, I guess, guys, I've got Batman Year 3 to go through. 2023 was the year Batman disappeared. And Batman Year 3 chronicles all of this. We're going to be doing a decode on this coming up. But I do want to paint a picture that the Batman did go away in 2023. That was what the theme of the Year 3 comics was, is that he's no longer, he's kind of like in a disheveled, depressed mindset with everything that's going on relative to Robin and blah, blah, blah. But with the detective nature of Ace Ventura, remember, the Batman theme, it's one that carries through almost everything, because Edward Snowden sharing ciphering techniques by veiling them in Batman. This is actually the art of deception document that Edward Snowden put out onto the internet so much. He didn't create it, but it is a document that you can reference to see all sorts of different Psy-Op-y mind control things that agents can use against you, and you can use against other agents. You can act as an agent yourself and use against others. And the calendar ritual of Batman, resetting the Mayan calendar, we've already shown as the apparent tie-in. But there are a couple of other tie-ins, like Jim Carrey being in a Batman movie called Batman Forever, playing a character called the Riddler. Also, there being some weirdness around Batman at the Oscars this year. See, I think the memory on my computer is struggling to keep up right now. I ordered some new memory for this new machine. But anyway, there's a Batman thing at the Oscars. I'm gonna have to get it pulled back up, because it was another key. It was another key of these Batman things that was going on lately, and then the Matthew Perry Batman stuff. There's all sorts of weird Batman stuff going on relative to the last several, I don't know, months. It's probably months. But the Jim Carrey stuff factors in from earlier in the episode, because, of course, the Batman Forever movie that he played the Riddler is another just really weird connection. He starred in this the year after the Ace Ventura movie, where he was the detective. But the Riddler is an interesting character to be cast as, too, amidst the misdirection. Because of what the Riddler does. He misdirects. So what is the misdirection going on with Jim Carrey? I'm going to try and close the video out in as few words as possible from here on in. Let's see if I can get it done in the next 20 minutes to 30 minutes. As long as my internet cooperates with me. Might have to just delete the Wrestlemania thing. Because just a lot of these websites aren't opening up real. I'm just going to have to wait for them, guys. So while that's loading up, I'm going to come down and start to make my case using some other graphics. Because they may or may not come back up. The misdirection in photos and videos and music and in all sorts of things is real. Like, I think I've shown this on my Discord. I don't know if it's made it into my videos before. I think it was the first time. Obviously, it's didn't make it in last week, so it wouldn't have made it in at all. But this is an example of how embedded imagery can be cast as steganography. Do you guys see how this image with George Bush and this guy leaning over is embedded with an AI into this image that just looks like a couple of soldiers walking through Palestine with a bunch of leavings and debris and garbage? Well, in a similar way, we, right in front of our faces, have been given a couple of different versions of Joe Biden over the last, I don't know, ever since he was elected or during the election. There's some weird inconsistencies that have always played out with the guy here on the left side of the pictures versus the guy on the right, which seems to be who we have in the office as president. Not really in the office, wink, 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 wink. I don't really think anybody's president right now. I think we're under martial law, technically, but the media is portraying with VSTEG components that the president is this guy here. The main thing genetically that we've been able to point to with whoever this is and whoever this is, and that he is not the original Joe Biden, is that the earlobes don't match. It's not something you can alter. It's just that's a genetic marker for uniqueness. And the old Joe Biden, the real Joe Biden, has a lot different brow. It's not as tight. His grin is a little bit different, and etc. So on and so forth. Now, let's see if our Twitter page has loaded up. Jeez, these things are... Maybe they don't want me to share my insights with you guys, huh? Because the Twitter ones... The Twitter ones are just not showing up. Well, I'll spare you the details. A lot of people on Twitter are going through and comparing Jim Carrey's face to a lot of these things. Now, if we just go back and that's really all the Twitter things were, guys. I wanted to show you some examples on Twitter of people talking about how the similarities are striking between who might be underneath the mask of Joe Biden, because that's what we are assuming. I mean, this is, at very least, this is a mask to me. And honestly, I can see, because the earlobe thing comes into some of these videos where they're saying that the alignment of the face, everything, it just matches up with Jim Carrey. And it's not like Jim Carrey can't get into character. We've seen Jim Carrey get oddly into character at times when he did this Andy Kaufman character in the Man on the Moon movie. The Man on the Moon movie. So we have some crazy Man on the Moon references. And also, I'm going to have to text myself something. Man on the Moon, because remember the moon, guys, is the secondary mechanism for the mind control. Primary mechanism, I would think, is the planet of Saturn. But the Man on the Moon, the fact that he starred at all in a movie called The Man on the Moon, is crazy to me. Excuse me. Just to begin with. Here we go. I'm just going to send it to Discord channel. Then I'll pull it up so we can look at it just as an image. Because Jim Carrey had a birthday recently too. And one of these images that he took at his birthday was one of the tweets I wanted to share with you. It was the whole reason I had to pivot here real quick. But real quick, we're going to watch this Man on the Moon clip so I can illustrate to you guys, if you never knew how much he got into character for Andy Kaufman, just how much he did. There was a Netflix documentary that was done about Jim Carrey's character that he played as Andy on, and this is that clip.
So Jim.
Yes.
How would you start this movie?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Carrey, and how are you this evening? Alrighty then.
Finding out you have something special and it gets a reaction. That's how I got attention and love. I've watched the stars fall silent from you. Andy Kaufman came in to turn reality on its head and not stop when the camera stopped.
Andy Kaufman came in to turn reality on its head. You see how some of this language even sneaks in.
Kaufman cared less about making his audience laugh than keeping them confused.
Wrestlemania! He blew my mind.
Cared less about making our audience laugh than he cared about keeping them confused. Just like Mind Control, right? So
When
even the themes of the Man on the Moon.
I was looking at the ocean, and that's the moment when Andy came back to make his movie.
Hello.
What happened after was out of my control.
Andy, that's enough. Perfect. I don't like it. I want to do one more.
Andy felt it was necessary to stay in the character.
He's exactly the way Andy was.
It's totally surreal.
Exactly the way Andy was. Totally surreal. So what this documentary is about, guys, is Jim Carrey supposedly embodying the spirit of Andy Kaufman in his own body, and Andy acted out the part through him. And just like in here, as this scene here is like Danny DeVito will come in later this episode too. It's the weird patterns that come up in these episodes, guys. Danny DeVito was part of the show Taxi. He was one of the people that knew Andy Kaufman, so he presumptively knew how he behaved, and was saying that he would do things that Jim Carrey would do things, say things that only Andy would have known, and blah, 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 blah. So that's this documentary. Whether you can even believe the documentary and that these guys aren't even in on it is for you to decide. I think they're all in on it myself. But, Andy, it's not impossible, I guess, especially using their black magic techniques to bring in the spirit of Andy Kaufman. But it does show how far into the role Jim Carrey goes and how far I wonder he's going now. I mean, if you look up Jim Carrey Biden SNL, he's not wearing the Biden mask. But
the following is a rebroadcast of Tuesday's presidential debate.
But it is Jim Carrey playing Biden. It is
Even
interesting
though Tuesday
to hear
feels
his
like
voice.
100 days ago. We thought it was important to see it again, since it might be the only presidential debate. And it was pretty fun to watch, as long as you don't live in America.
So this is, I think it's Alec Baldwin.
Good evening, I'm your
playing,
moderator, Chris Wallace.
Trump. Let's just skip forward. So here we go. So here's Jim Carrey's Biden.
It looks like you're ready to debate, Joe.
Absolutely not. I've got the beginning of 46 thoughts. Now let's do this. I'm holding my bladder. Let's get at her.
Tonight we'll...
All right. So that's his fictitious version of Biden. But, those still aren't coming back. Nope. I just lost Twitter is all, guys. They're Twitter doesn't want me to see some things, apparently. I'm just going to exit out of them. Oh, they're coming up. Okay, here we go. Of course. Right when I start exiting out of all these things. Here's one of them. One of them came up. So let's push play on this one. A little bit clunky last 5 minutes to this episode because of the lack of loading up on the screens, guys. But let me show you what this guy has to say about Jim Carrey, and then we'll move on to some of the symbolism that I'm finding in him, and then move on to what else is happening with him. So that's just gonna redirect to TikTok.
I saved my best work for last. Enjoy the editing.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to watch it because it's on TikTok, and I don't have a TikTok account. Well, I'll link it for you guys. This is the one that I guess I couldn't open. I had two other ones that I wanted to open. Let's see if I can get history. Isaac's Army. Here we go. So we have this one of the guy posting on Isaac's Army. Looks like a guy in a mask, right? Up close on this Biden character. And then there's this one where the guy who's talking about Biden being Jim Carrey. But there are a lot of people on Twitter sharing their reasoning why Jim Carrey may or may not be Biden. And they all have something to do with matching up, the facial structures and stuff like that. We connect to the steganography. So I'm looking at it from a perspective of, if it is Jim Carrey, how might we be able to determine it is? One of the reasons I'm able to determine this is because, or suppose on it, is we just shared the whole Andy Kaufman thing. Okay, Man on the Moon, more steg. But the more interesting component that related to the mask itself was going back and seeing how many of how many of Jim Carrey's characters actually made it into cartoons. Like, you had Ace Ventura cartoon. I don't know if you guys remember this stuff from the 90s. You had the Ace Ventura cartoon, and you also had the Mask cartoon. So both of these series made it to children's networks. I watched both of them. I don't even know much about either one of them, but there's this weird tie-in with Ace Ventura and therefore The Mask. And The Mask is something of a movie where, you got this nobody that comes in and he becomes somebody with all of this bourgeois and confidence himself. Jim Carrey is definitely not a nobody. But the whole emphasis behind The Mask and the Riddler and the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, because there's this other green character that Jim Carrey played when he was wearing a green mask. And all of them somehow boil down to stealing of a meme, stealing of the mind. So you have the AV, right? AV for the V steganography with Ace Ventura. You've got The Mask. You've got The Man on the Moon. And you've got The Truman Show. The Truman Show is all about like putting it all together. Remember, all the mind controls happening from the moon in The Truman Show. All the controllers and all the administrators are looking down on the little population of the town that's totally created for Jim Carrey's character, for Truman. And you have the recognition that it's all a lie. So what do these all have to do with each other? And what is Batman the detective inferring us to look at through Jim Carrey, the Riddler? And what is the riddle that we're supposed to solve? And is the riddle truly that Jim Carrey is Biden in a mask? I don't know, but what I do know is that Jim Carrey is probably part of the control network to some degree. And if this photo is any indication of his birthday, not so long ago, this was taken, when was this? January 17th. Look who he's got, guys. I mean, he's got fucking Jimmy Kimmel here. He's got Howie Mandel. This is who is this? This is the guy from The Office. That guy, I forgot what the guy's name is. But he's got Adam Sandler, Seth Green, Bill Burr. A lot of these guys, I don't know who's in the background there, but a lot of these guys are... Oh, and then David Spade. David Spade's in the back. There's Adam Sandler, David Spade, and Jim Carrey from the same event. Oddly colored room. But what's interesting is he's got this shirt with Saturn on it, and there's a person sitting on Saturn. So he's got, I mean, he's got the V-Stag right there in his friggin' photo of people that are involved in Epstein Pizzagate. You know, like public enemy to Isaac Cappy #1 here. Seth Green with a fucking Mickey Mouse shirt on. Adam Sandler. Howie Mandel again. Jimmy Kimmel, who's like he's like the butt end of the slave joke probably in Hollywood. I think he's like the guy that'll do anything for the controller's bidding, and so he's just kind of always there. But how central is Jim Carrey to all this, you wonder, right? I mean, what is the Saturn shirt signifying? I don't know entirely, but I do suspect that it might have something to do with the fact that he is playing Biden with a much better makeup get-up than what he donned for this skit, and with a much more embodied role, not like he's doing on a skit here, but embodying the role like he did as Andy Kaufman. Just what I suspect. Just what I suspect. It's funny that at the Oscars also, you had this weird thing happen with Danny DeVito. Might I add that WrestleMania 40 is happening in Philadelphia. The Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference. Can't help but include that in there too. But there's yet another Batman reference relating to Danny DeVito in this whole through line involving he and Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Penguin and Mr. Freeze, two ex-villains of Batman. They're talking at the Oscars about this Michael Keaton thing.
It's so beautiful.
It's just another cultural point with Batman being dropped, right?
Well, Arnold and I are presenting tonight together for a very obvious reason.
We both tried to kill Batman.
Yeah.
They both tried to kill Batman, and another one of those transgender jokes. They were both men that had babies in the movie Junior, I think, or Twins? It's Twins. Twins. The movie Twins. I think it was Danny DeVito, or Junior movie. Was Danny DeVito even in Junior? Yes, he or was it always just on the cover of the VHS that I thought was him? The sirens are going off outside, guys. I don't know what's going on near my house, but who is that guy? Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know what's going on with the sirens right next to my house. If I have to get off this stream for some reason, it's because there are sirens going on all over the place. Junior was the movie where he was the guy that had a kid. No, that's not Danny DeVito. It is Danny DeVito. Okay, so they were both in both movies together. So you have Arnold Schwarzenegger, Danny DeVito, and now there's just horns going on. I don't know what's going on, guys. It's kind of insane what's going on outside my house right now. Sorry. But anyway, they both made this appearance, and it's funny because, okay, Batman and then Twins, but the Junior reference where Danny DeVito was actually the doctor signified with all this transgenderism stuff that men could have babies. Just a weird fucking degrading movie for the action star of the day to star in, right?
Yeah, well, we're both right. I as the Penguin in Batman Returns.
That was Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin.
How did Batman beat you?
Oh, he used my one weakness against me.
Heat?
Love.
Oh. He threw me out a window.
the one weakness, just like Cupid, right? The one weakness they use against you, the whole Cupid thing with the myth of the Cupid and the Psyche, his one weakness. And that is the case with the Dr. Freeze character, obviously, but the love.
Yeah, really. Yeah, he's really
Batman, that son of a bitch.
Where is he?
Yeah.
He's here.
I hate him.
There he is.
I hate
He's right here. He's right here. Look.
You have a lot of nerve to show your face
No, yeah,
around
you
here.
got, you know.
Son of a
You
bitch.
are a real beak breaker.
Then, Michael Keaton played Batman in the Tim Burton movies, so
I'm gonna see you after the governor's ball,
You better believe it.
pal. All right.
of course all this is playing out in Variety, the Variety Twitter feed. And like I showed before, guys, only comes secondary to this weirdness with Matthew Perry's death and all the Batman mentions here. There's some sort of coincidental deep dive that we'll do with Batman Year 3 on a Substack article. My point is to show you the steganography, guys. We're at this point in time where I don't know what all of these themes have pointed at throughout WrestleMania and the solar eclipse rituals and what the Super Bowl always portends for us. But the comics always lead the way. The comics always lead the way. The Deadpool situation is also one that carries on from the Super Bowl. And I just want to leave that the Ace of Spades from Ace Ventura is also an ominous, foreboding kind of situation for what the eclipse portends, potentially. So the Ace of Spades and the name Ventura, this is how we're going to close out today, guys, are things to analyze in reference to what we might expect, how Jim Carrey might play out as Biden. Is he really Biden? I don't know, but I do suspect that it's very probable that he is. And then what kind of resets, what kind of chaos are we going to get? Kind of like what's happening outside my door, apparently, at the eclipse to conclude this winter solstice reset ritual. The name on Ace Ventura, the thing that led us all the way here from the Super Bowl 53 video, connecting Jim Carrey through to the V-Stag, is, well, I just got to find it. Here we go. The Ace of Spades, and the name of Ventura, and Ace of Spades signifies something very significant too. David Spade, as you saw in the picture. But the name Ventura is curious because it has Jewish recollected reference. So this goes to the Romans' supposed conquering of the Jewish nation in 70 CE, which is, it's not a correct timeline to measure the calendar by. But as they put within that structure, much of the Jewish population was sent into exile throughout the Roman Empire. And Ventura was the name that they gave to the place and communities that the Jewish people formed after being scattered. Many were sent to the Iberian Peninsula. Approximately 750,000 Jews living in Spain in the year 1492 were banished from the country. A royal decree of Ferdinand and Isabella. They were banished from the country. So Ventura is kind of like this name for here's where all the Jews are. Like as it's put, like here's what we found, right? As what the definitional quality of it here is being written as, but it's like it's got all this underpinning to the Jewish nation of people, the crypto Jews. That's what they call themselves, right? That hide themselves in the masses. And isn't it interesting that is a sense of place, yet also an exclamation of here's what we've found, like as if to say, almost like eureka is kind of how I've determined how the word Ventura is used in Latin. it's as if to say like, wow, we found them amongst us. Like, here's what we found, right? They are hidden amongst us. So we found them only after seeing them for what they are. And it's interesting that this term lines up with the banishing of the Jews. So in other interpretations of the name and the word Ventura, we come across kind of the etymology and pronunciation, the Latin Ventura, the things that will come, the future, which will come, the things that approach. So you have it being used in a couple of different ways here. You have it being used in like, oh, this is a foreboding. This situation is about to arise by the predictive nature of what the future holds for us. And then by destiny, by fate, by chance, by fortune. So by fortune, the ace of spades, ace Ventura, the death card, right? By fortune, by forecast, amongst you, from amongst you, I will cast these casuistry spells. It's almost ridiculous how the ace of spades and ace Ventura factor into the whole ritual. The ace of spades is also kind of the key denotation of luck, good luck or bad luck. Nina Thurman, as we talked about remember, Nina Thurman is an Arma Jesuit. Her trade and her superpower is luck. She comes from the training of the Arma Jesuits in the Marvel lore. And she also is showcased in the second Deadpool movie. Remember the third Deadpool movie's coming out? Ooh. Remember the V-Stag from the first Deadpool commercial from the third movie? What is this? It's a phi. Deadpool, phi. Phi ratio, V-Stag. The phi lesson from the beginning of the episode. And what was prominent in the Super Bowl this year with the symbols was the phi symbol. Remember in the Champions logo after the Super Bowl was over? The trailer was announced. Okay, we're going to find a lot of Stag in Deadpool 3, I suspect. But in Deadpool 2, what we had was a situation where the actress that was playing the stunt double of Nina Thurman didn't have such good luck. Ritually murdered. Almost like the ritual murder of the person on set of the movie Rust when Alec Baldwin shot that individual, right? Alec Baldwin's Rust. Helena Hutchins, that was her name, right? Helena Hutchins. So, lots of weird, circular stuff going on in V-Stag world, guys. I mean, it's almost too much to like predict altogether what's going to happen. It's a lot for even me, kind of overwhelmed getting back into this stuff and trying to create enough context with individual topics that this whole picture doesn't go over everybody's head that's just coming to this stuff for the first time. But you got to wonder what's going to happen here in a couple of weeks between now and the eclipse. Hopefully he'll see me between now and then once more, twice more. It's probably going to be maximum of once more, but I'm trying to figure out some more collaborative opportunities to do with some more people like Mr. Corey Daniel. If you're listening out there, give me a call. He and I are playing phone tag. So maybe something in that realm, and then some other surprises up the belt to talk through these themes further and decode the steganography and our culture around us. I'll continue to do these videos, guys, every once in a while. I do intend to get into the more nitty-gritty investigations, reading more of our books to catch back up on. I got to actually, Lost Star Myth and Time is not a new book by any stretch of the imagination. But in the next video, if this TikTok thing plays out with the banning of TikTok, I will tell you that the implications of it and how they tie into the Wizard of Oz, they're going to be big. I think I'll be saving that for another day. and wishing everybody a fair due from here. But you know, I do. It's been enjoyable getting back into this, guys. I hope you're enjoying the work once again. Give the channel a follow if you haven't done so already, and that is the Rumble channel, the YouTube channel, the BitChute channel, wherever you are. By the way, I don't know how I lost access to my BitChute channel. It's just, we'll talk about that later. I no longer have access to my BitChute channel. Whoever is posting on my original channel and mirroring my videos there and has access to it, it's not me. It's weird because they're not misrepresenting the videos that they're uploading. All of a sudden, like they uploaded my last Super Bowl video over there. Whoever did it, I can't get access back to my account. Every time I try to reset the account to the email, the request goes into the void. So for now, you can continue to follow me over there because somebody is posting my videos. But follow me mainly on Rumble and I guess YouTube for now. The Rumble channel is as we'll talk about in a future episode too, with this wellness company stuff and how it might be involved with the whole Theranos deal that we looked into all those years ago. It's just, it's a crazy time, guys. So I'm back. Love y'all. We'll talk real soon. Be safe out there. Peace.